You know how we all thought the baseball season was disappointing here in New York? Well, the football season looks like it might be even worse. So last night, the New York Giants lost to the Seattle Seahawks in pretty much maybe the most embarrassing game of the year. I know you could look at the Dallas Cowboys 40-0, first game of the season. They followed it up with a win to the Cardinals. The Cardinals aren't great, but Michael Parsons, that pass rush, right? Andrew Thomas gets hurt. Like this, it was the Cowboys are really good. First game of the year, like I said, you can make up a bunch of excuses. Yesterday, though, home, Seattle Seahawks, who are on the level of the Giants, and if you're comparing the two teams to last year, right? The Seahawks are going to be good, right? They're going to be a 9-10 win team, probably, right? And the New York Giants come out yesterday, and it looks like, right, in the opening drive, looks like they're going to get a few plays in. And then after that 4th-and-1 call from Brian Dable to do the push sneak, which only the Philadelphia Eagles are good at, gets two people hurt on the play, two key injuries for them. And now they get nothing out of that drive, similar to the first drive of the Dallas game at home. I mean, you can't think of a worse start for the New York Giants. I know they won against the Cardinals, right? And listen, the Cardinals have been, you know, they've been getting things done lately. They've been winning games. They beat the Cowboys, right? They've been competitive in these games, maybe better than we thought. But ultimately, that's what they're not that good. And the Giants came out and won. That was good for them. But then 49ers, tough game, right? The Giants probably played a little bit better than people were expecting, but still a loss. There's no moral victories here. We're going to get that when we talk about the Jets soon. The Giants have so many issues now, and it's on everybody at this point. It's on Daniel Jones. It's on Brian Dable. It's on the defense. It's on all the coaches, right? It's on special teams. Like, everybody's to blame. It's on the GM at this point for this horrendous start. I mean, yeah, the baseball season sucked, right? But us New Yorkers, New Jersey guys, like we guys and girls, like all were excited for this football season just because the Jets obviously signed Aaron Rodgers. The Giants had a really good season last year, and the Jets had some promising moments last year that we all thought, like, okay, these are playoff teams here. And Daniel Jones signed that $40 million contract, which we'll get into soon. And it just seemed like things were going, things were going to be different this year. The new management, but it's just been a complete rewind to the Pat Shurmur, Dave Gettleman days. Like, just awful. Reese days, like all of it. Like, this organization has been giving us dry, horrible to watch offenses, which is crazy because you have an outstanding offensive mind as your head coach, and I just need to talk about the issues that I pointed out yesterday because there's many. Obviously, Daniel Jones has to play better. I mean, I've been someone who's defended him. Daniel Jones, I think, is a average to slightly above average quarterback, and I think you can win with him because of his toughness, and I think he's mobile. And you could do things with him that maybe you can't do with other quarterbacks. However, his decision making, which seemed to be kind of fixed last year, is just back to where it was before, right? His interceptions. I mean, that pick six, it reminded me of the Titans game last year on opening day. Now, the Giants didn't win that game, but when Dable went over to Daniel Jones, it's like, you got to make better decisions, right? And today, or last night, we're taping this on Tuesday afternoon. Brian Dable goes over to Daniel Jones. He's like, are you kidding me? And just kind of throws his iPad, right? I mean, just completely botched the call. I mean, Darren Waller was open in the end zone. You had a touchdown there, and Daniel Jones doesn't see it. throws a pick six. That's the game right there. That's the entire game. And even with the incredible mistakes that were made, right? Like the fact that the defense can't tackle a damn thing. I mean, the softest tackles you'll see from a football team, they just cannot bring these guys down, no matter who it is, whether it's the Cardinals, whether it's the Cowboys, the 49ers, the Seahawks. Everybody runs all over them once they have the football in their hands. And that's unacceptable. And I don't really know how to fix that. It's just like bad tackling. Just stop. I mean, the Niners game was really tough to watch. I mean, the third down conversions that they kept getting in that Niner game was just over and over and over again. And we know what was the over and over and over again factor in this game was sacks. Daniel Jones getting sacked a million times. And I don't want to defend Daniel Jones too much because he didn't play well. He gave up, his turnovers were led to key points for the deficit. And it's frustrating because, yeah, he's needs to play better. But man, there were times where that offensive line just wasn't giving him any time. This team is a very different team without, and listen, the O-line, it's not good. It's pretty dreadful. But it's worth pointing out that they are banged up at the moment. So it sucks, but they're banged up. Barkley's banged up. It just seems like when these injuries happen for the Giants, they're fatal. Like they can't execute anything without them. And that's just very disappointing. And it's on everybody. Okay. Like I love Brian Dable. I love what he did for this team last year, but you got to kind of look at it as like, okay, basically since the Eagles game last year, this team has been unprepared, like just undisciplined. How many penalty calls, how many dumb penalty calls are we going to see this year from this New York Giants team? They were so disciplined last year. They didn't turn the ball over. And that leads to me where I'm thinking like, okay, it probably is on Dable in some ways, but I know what it's kind of like to like kind of coach kids or coach players. And, you know, sometimes it's just like you could say everything, but the players just aren't processing it and they don't get it right away. And that's really frustrating. So I honestly think that's what it is. But the Giants have been arguably the worst team in the NFL this year. I mean, other than the Broncos, listen, the Broncos got a big win versus the Bears the other day. I think the Cardinals are better than the Bears, but still, I mean, you're splitting hairs here. The Giants aren't supposed to be the worst team in the NFL. They're not even supposed to be close to that. Okay. And just briefly, I want to talk about Daniel Jones and his contract, because a lot of people keep saying, including myself, that this guy was getting paid $40 million a year. And yeah, when I first saw that contract, I was like, okay, that's a lot of money. But then I looked at all the other contracts for quarterbacks in the NFL. He's basically what he earned from last year. No one thought Daniel Jones was really like a top 5 quarterback at all. If maybe, you know, top 10 was a lot for people. And especially this season, you're not going to get that. He's, I believe, the 13th highest paid quarterback in the league. So he's average to slightly above average. That's basically what he is. So yes, this new contract, this new commitment to Daniel Jones, I said before the season even started, and before anybody, you know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out, there was going to be newly added pressure, especially since this new front office and coaching staff had believed in him at this point. They're like, okay, we're giving you this money. You earned it last year. Now go out and play. Like his decision-making is just not the same as last year. And if we're looking at this season, now listen, it's still early. They're 1-3, but look at the next 2 games. I mean, 4 games. I mean, you got to go to the Jets, that 4th game. I mean, the Commanders have looked good this year. Like, yes, the Commanders are 2-2, but they played the Eagles pretty well. And honestly, if Rivera, which I believe he should have went for 2 in regulation instead of kicking the extra point and losing it in overtime on the road versus the Philadelphia Eagles, you know, they could be 3-1. I mean, other than that disaster game to the Bills, the Commanders have looked good. So if you're looking as a Giants fan or listen, there's no easy games in the NFL. I understand that. But like just some daylight. Okay, we can handle the Commanders. You can't, I mean, the Commanders have looked really good this year. They've looked far and away better than the New York Giants. What makes you think they're going to win that game? You got the Bills, who have basically been dominant ever since that pathetic opening week versus the Jets. The Dolphins, who did not look great, but they played the Bills. So the Dolphins have looked great all year up until this past weekend. So the Giants got to figure out soon. And for a lot of people, the season is over because this was a game that was needed, right? Because they would have been 2-2. They would have been going into this tough stretch of their schedule. They have the third toughest schedule to end the second half of the season. But this is a situation where at 2-2, you would have been feeling much better going in to next week against the Miami Dolphins. But now they're not in that situation. Now they're 1-3, and they're staring at 1-5. And with how well the Commanders are playing, 1-6. And listen, the Jets, who we'll get to soon, who haven't looked good this year, really, showed some signs in this game versus Kansas City that they played on Sunday night that they could possibly dig themselves out of this hole. The Giants haven't shown any of that. Pretty much all their games have been pretty pathetic in some way or fashion. I mean, the Jets didn't look pathetic versus the Chiefs. The Jets didn't look pathetic in week 1. They won. The Giants even looked pathetic in the game that they did win. And that's a huge concern. And, I was looking at this team before the season started. I'm like, I think we could still get, I think they're over under for wins was 7.5. I'm like, I think we still, I'm on the team. I think they still can get 9 wins, 9-10 wins, and maybe squeak in to that 6th or 7th spot. That's what I saw because I was looking at the schedule. I was like, okay, I think we're on the level of this team. But one of those teams was Seattle, and Seattle beat the brakes off of the Giants at MetLife. It's unacceptable play, and they really got to look at themselves in the mirror. This defense is soft. They can't tackle anybody. The undisciplined, penalties, the lack of discipline, I should say. And their coach is not really having this team ready to play. It doesn't seem like what they're saying is getting to the players. And Daniel Jones has to be better. And obviously, Saquon Barkley's out. You hope when he comes back, which you hope is next week, but you don't know. I mean, the high ankle sprain. I mean, Barkley playing through sprained ankles over the years hasn't really gone well. So you don't want like Barkley being crap out there, but just a threat would be nice, I guess. But you hope he comes back, right? You hope Andrew Thomas comes back. But this team right now looks like a disaster, and they're 1-3. So you're like, okay, still early in the year, but then you're looking forward and you're like, so many tough teams they got to beat. So many tough teams. Now, your hope as a Giants fan is you can go into next week looking like maybe the Jets did versus Kansas City, where no one had the Jets winning that game. No one had the Jets even being a competitive opponent in that game. And they were losing 17-0. So it looked like, the guys are probably right. But they made it a game. Zach Wilson made it a game, right? These games in the NFL get close. Sometimes you get weird games, right? So your hope as a Giants fan is you can get one of the next 2 and go 2-4 going into the Commanders game, which is still not a great record. So I'm very concerned as a New York Giants fan myself